Hi, welcome to Documents and Drafts, the podcast where we take a look at important historical events, especially important to the United States, and drink some really cool beers along the way. We look at the background of each document and each beer. We will read each document and talk about each beer. So we'll do some other cool things as well. The plan's been to do about one of these a month or so. Been trying to do about one every 3.5 weeks. I'm a little bit behind right now, tax season and other things. All background music is provided by Soundstripe. I use the blues genre. Today's documents are coming from 50 American Core Documents from the Ashbrook Press. We're going to look at Letter to the Hebrew Congregation at Newport from George Washington, the Bill of Rights, and Property by James Madison. We are going to look at some historic um, um, Supreme Court cases, ex parte Crow Dog, ex parte McCardle, and ex parte Milligan. We're going to also use SCOTUS blog to look at some of the current things that are going on. And this is different for me, but I am drinking Nanjing Black Beer from China, from Master Gao Beer Brewing. Um, Never had it, never tried it. So we're going to try it. It was a gift somebody brought me from World of Beer, I'm guessing. Tastes like beer. It's a little strong flavor-wise, but that's okay. All right, so let's get the share screen up here so we can get started. So again, documents and drafts, welcome. We're going to use these two books, 50 Core American Documents, Nations Archives, History of the United States and Documents, edited by Eric Brown and Jay Crosby. Today, we're going to use the 54 American Documents book, put out by the Ashbrook Press. And there's GW, and there's James Madison, and some SCOTUS stuff. And I'll try to remember to do the thank yous at the end. Okay. So, again, the 50 core documents that we're going to do. The first one is called Letter to the Hebrew Congregation at Newport. I think the background music from Soundstripe is just a skosh loud, so let's fix that. That's a little better. All right. So the first one we're going to read is Letter to the Hebrew Congregation at Newport from George Washington, August 21st, 1790. Upon his election as president, many churches, congregations, and religious societies wrote to Washington to congratulate him on his new office, and he replied to each of them with personalized messages of thanks for their well wishes. In this reply to the Hebrew congregation of Newport, Washington, applauded to the people of the United States for rejecting the European practice of religious toleration, quote unquote, embracing instead the enlarged and liberal policy that religious liberty is a natural right and not a gift of government, which all citizens are equally free to exercise. So here's the letter. Gentlemen, while I received with much satisfaction your address replete with expressions of esteem, I rejoice in the opportunity of assuring you that I shall always retain grateful remembrance of the cordial welcome I experienced on my visit to Newport from all classes of citizens. The reflection on the day of difficulty and danger which are past is rendered the more sweet from a consciousness that they are succeeded by days of uncommon prosperity and security. If we have wisdom to make the best use of the advantage with which we are now favored, we cannot fail, under the just administration of a good government, to become a great and happy people. The citizens of the United States of America have a right to applaud themselves for having given to mankind examples of an enlarged and liberal policy, a policy worthy of imitation. All possess a like liberty of conscience and immunities of citizenship. It is now no more that toleration is spoken of as if it were the indulgence of one class of people that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. For happily, the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens in giving it on all occasions their effectual support. It would be inconsistent with the frankness of my character not to avow that I am pleased with your favorable opinion of my administration and fervent wishes for my felicity. May the children of the stock of Abraham who dwell in this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of other inhabitants, while everyone shall sit in the safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. May the Father of all mercy scatter light and not darkness upon our paths, and make us all in our several vocations useful here, and in his own due time and way everlastingly happy. George Washington. All right, so that was Washington's letter to a Hebrew congregation, thanking them for his support and understanding that when they talk about, what's the word that he uses? Liberty of conscience meets freedom of religion, right? It's the way to practice your religion the way you want. All right, the next document is the Bill of Rights. During the ratification debate, here's the background. During the ratification debates over the Constitution, Thomas Jefferson wrote to James Madison that a Bill of Rights is what the people are entitled to against every government on earth. Madison replied in a letter of October 1787 that he did not think the new government and Constitution were defective without a formal Bill of Rights, but agreed that its addition could be useful for securing liberty on occasions in the future. Americans would come to view a Bill of Rights, he wrote, as embodying the fundamental maxims of free government, to which they could appeal on those occasions when government overstepped its constitutional bounds. In this, Madison predicted with great insight just how much the Bill of Rights would come to inform the constitutional mind of the American people. Here's a little picture of Jimmy for you. All right, Amendment number 1. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Amendment 2. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Amendment 3. No soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in any time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. Amendment 4. The right of the people to be secured in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Amendment 5. No person shall be held to answer for capital or otherwise infamous crime, unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compared in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Amendment 6. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right of a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein that crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed on the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witness against him, and to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel in his defense. Amendment 7. In suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined, in any court of the United States than according to the rules of common law. Amendment 8, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. Amendment 9, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Amendment 10, the power not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited to it by the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. I think that should be required reading for every new congressman every January 6th. Just want to check one thing real quick before we do the next thing that we're going to do. We'll make sure that everything is being recorded. Okay, good. We're good to go. The next thing, also written by Jimmy Madison. Have some black beer from Mao Brewing from China. Strong flavor. All right. Excuse me, I'm going to disappear off the screen for a second. Okay. The next piece is called property. In this newspaper essay, it's from March 29, 1792. Madison offered thoughtful reflections on the connection of liberty and property. Here's another thing probably ought to be required reading. Liberty is a property all human beings possess by nature, which is rooted in the natural freedom of the human mind. Through the free use of their minds and the freedoms to choose how and to what ends to employ their natural faculties, individuals pursue, acquire, possess, and use property in its more commonly understood sense. The first duty of government, therefore, Madison wrote, is to partially protect the property individuals have in their own faculties and fruits that they have acquired by their own industry. Now, I know that property tax pays for blah, 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 blah. But having somebody who has paid off their house, it should stop. You can find other ways to pay for those things. That would be a protection of my property. All right, this is from on the National Gazette, page and a half. The term in its particular application means that dominion which one man claims and exercises over the external things of the world in exclusion of every other individual. It is larger and juster meaning. It embraces everything to which a man may attach a value and have a right, and which leaves to everyone else the like advantage. In the former sense, a man's land or merchandise or money is called his property. In the latter sense, a man has property in his opinions and the free communications of them. He has property of a peculiar value in his religious opinions and in the profession and practice dictated by them. He has a property very dear to him in the safety and liberty of his person. He has an equal property in the free use of his faculties and free choice of the objects on which to employ them. Where an excess of power prevails, property of no sort is duly respected. No man is safe in his opinions, his person, his faculties, or his possessions. When there is an excess of liberty, the effect is the same, though from an opposite cause. Government is instituted to protect property of every sort, as well that which lies in the various rights of individuals, as that which the term particularly expresses. This being the end of government that alone is a just government which impartially secures to every man whatever is his own. According to the standard of merit, the praise of affording a just security to property should be sparingly bestowed on a government which, however scrupulous guarding the possessions of individuals, does not protect them in the enjoyment and communication of their opinions, in which they have an equal, and in the estimation of some, a more valuable property. More sparingly should this praise be allowed to a government where a man's religious rights are violated by penalties, or fettered by tests, or taxed by a hierarchy. Conscience is the most sacred of all property, other property depending on part on positive law, the exercise of that being a naturally and unalienable right. My apologies. Where are we? Naturally an unalienable right to guard a man's house as his castle to pay public and enforce private debts with the most exact faith, can give no title to invade a man's conscience, is the most sacred of all property. Oh, I'm doing all kinds of crazy stuff here. Hang on just a second. Start the music over. Fix my phone so it doesn't go off anymore. Not what I wanted. My apologies for that. And here we go. More Jimmy Mouse. To guard a man's house as his castle, to pay public and enforce private debts with the most exact faith, can give no title to invade a man's conscience, which is more sacred than his castle, or to withhold from it that debt of protection for which the public faith is pledged by the very nature and original conditions of the social pact. This is not a just government, nor is property secure under it, where the property which a man has is his personal safety and personal liberty, is violated by arbitrary seizures of one class of citizens for the service of the rest. A magistrate issuing his warrants to a press gang would be in his proper function in Turkey or Indostan under appellations proverbial of the most complete despotism. That is not a just government, nor is property secure under it, where arbitrary restrictions, exemptions, and monopolies deny to part of its citizens that free use of their faculties and free choice of their occupations, which not only constitute their property in the general sense of the word, but are the means of acquiring property strictly called, what must be the spirit of legislation, where manufacture of linen cloth is forbidden to bury his own child in a linen shroud in order to favor his neighbor who manufactures woolen cloth. Where the manufacture and wearer of woolen cloth are again forbidden the economical use of buttons of that material in favor of the manufacture of buttons of other materials. A just security to property is not afforded by the government, under which unequal taxes oppress one species of property and reward another species, where arbitrary taxes invade the domestic sanctuaries of the rich and excessive taxes grind the faces of the poor, whereas keenness and competitions of want are deemed an insufficient spur to labor, and taxes are again applied by an unfeeling policy as another spur in violation of that sacred property, which heaven, in decreeing man to earn his bread by the sweat of his brow, kindly reserved to him in the small repose that could be spared from the supply of his necessities. If there be a government that which prides itself on maintaining the inviolability of property, which provides that none shall be taken directly, even for public use, without indemnification to the owner, and yet directly violates the property for which the individuals have, in their opinion, their religion, their persons, and their faculties, nay, more, which indirectly violates their property in their actual possessions, in the labor that acquires their daily subsistence, and in the hallowed remnant of time, which ought to relieve their fatigue and soothe their cares. The influence will have been anticipated that such a government is not a pattern for the United States. If the United States means to obtain and deserve the full praise due to wise and just governments, they will equally respect the rights of property. And the property and rights, they will rival the government that most sacredly guard the former, and by repelling its examples and violating the latter, which will make themselves a pattern to that and to all other governments. That ought to be required reading as well for anybody in office anywhere. So today we read A Letter to the Hebrew Congregation at Newport by George Washington, the Bill of Rights, primarily written by Jimmy Madison, and Property, also written by James Madison, from the book 50 Core Documents, put out by Ashbrook Press. I'm going to drink and have another little sip of my Chinese black beer, put out by Master Gal Brewing. It's very interesting. I don't hate it. I don't think I could drink more than one. All right, so now we're going to look at SCOTUS, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is to make this a little smaller. I want to return to my meeting. There we go. So I can find what I'm looking for. And that is SCOTUS history. Here we go. From oia.org. So we're going to look at ex parte Crow Dog, ex parte McCardle, and ex parte Milligan. If we have the time. Let's look at our time left. Oh, only about halfway done. So that's, why are we paused? Are we paused? No. Okay. All right, here's ex parte Crow Dog. This is from oia.com, which is from the University of Chicago. That grammar crap off of here. All right. This is August 26, 1883. In August 1881, a Native American named Congishincha, maybe, Crow Dog in English, shot and killed another Native American on the Great Sioux Reservation in present-day South Dakota. The Sioux tribal government convicted Crow Dog and, applying traditional Sioux law, ordered him to pay restitution to the victim's family. The government of the Dakota Territory also charged Crow Dog with murder, and after being found guilty, Crow Dog was sentenced to death. Crow Dog appealed for a writ of habeas corpus and argued that the federal court lacked jurisdiction, pointing to an 1834 act that specifically excluded crimes committed by one Native American on another from federal jurisdiction. The government argued that an 1868 treaty with the Sioux that required the tribe to surrender criminals to the United States superseded the earlier statute. So the question is to the court, did the federal law grant the Dakota Territory's jurisdiction over the murder for which Crow Dog was convicted? The conclusion, no. In a 9-0 decision authored by Justice Stanley Matthews, the court concluded that Congress had not granted federal courts jurisdiction over the murder of one Native American by another. The court interpreted the 1868 treaty stipulation that criminals be surrendered to the federal government in context, and given that the treaty was made between two parties, the party of whites and their allies, and the tribe of Indians, concluded the provision did not conflict with or repeal the 1834 law. Justice Matthews' opinion goes on to note that while the law was clearly conflicted on the question, because the 1834 law was never expressly repealed, there was no positive repugnancy between the provisions of the new law and those of the old that would entail an implied repeal. So that's ex parte Crow Dog. I don't know why. Can't just go backwards. There we go. Oh, I knew it would do that. Now I got to scroll down. Scroll ex parte McCardle. Let's look at ex parte McCardle. Let's get some more music going here. Music's provided by Soundstripe. There we go. All right, ex parte McCardle. This is March 3rd, 1869. In 1867, William McCardle was arrested by military authorities for publishing a series of editorials criticizing the Reconstruction in his Mississippi newspaper. McCardle sought a writ of habeas corpus on the grounds that Reconstruction acts under which he was arrested were unconstitutional. The judge sent him back into custody, finding that military actions legal under Congress's law. McCardle appealed to the Supreme Court under an 1867 congressional statute that conferred jurisdiction on appeal to the High Court. After hearing the argument of the case, but prior to announcing a decision, the Congress withdrew its 1867 act conferring jurisdiction. The question was, may the Congress withdraw jurisdiction from the High Court after the jurisdiction had been given? Yes, the court validated congressional withdrawal of the court's jurisdiction. The basis for this repeal was the exceptions clause of Article 3, Section 2, but Chase pointedly reminded his readers that the 1868 statute repealing jurisdiction does not affect jurisdiction which was previously exercised. So that's Ex parte McArdle. One more. Oh my gosh. Why does it do that? We need Ex parte Milligan is pretty famous. So here it is. It's 1866. Lambden P. Milligan was sentenced to death by military commission in Indiana during the Civil War for engaging in acts of disloyalty. Milligan sought release through habeas corpus from a federal court. Does a civil court have jurisdiction over a military tribunal? The conclusion, unanimous for Milligan. Writing for the court, Justice David Davis held that the trials of civilians by presidentially created military commissions are unconstitutional. Specifically, it is unconstitutional to try civilians by military tribunals unless there's no civilian court available. The military commission therefore did not have jurisdiction to try and sentence Milligan, and he was entitled to a discharge. Milligan was thrown in, you heard why he was thrown in jail. So those are our SCOTUS for today. Ex parte Milligan, Ex parte McArdle, and Ex parte Crow Dog. So we're going to do one more thing if we have the time. We do. Good. We are going to look at the SCOTUS blog while we have some more beer here. We're going to look at what's going on right now. So cases, oral argument document from October 2025, Learning Resources versus Trump, that's a tariff. Trump versus Barbara, that's birthright citizenship. Trump versus Slaughter, independent agencies. And in Louisiana versus Calais, that's a Voting Right Act. And we've talked about a couple of those. Interim docket, Trump versus Moyet, Mullen v. Doe, Tangipa versus Newsom, Abbott versus League of United Latin American Citizens, Trump v. Cook. Man, there's a lot of stuff. Okay, so we're going to go back to their cover page and we're going to look at the Brothers of Birthright Citizenship oral argument highlights. This is put together by Akhil and Vikram Amar, I believe. Hope I did them justice. Over the last 2 months, as we laid out our ideas about key issues in the birthright citizenship case Trump v. Barbara, today we compare our arguments and analysis to what the justice asked and said at oral arguments on April 1st. As it turned out, virtually every justice asked or said at least one thing, and several justices asked and said several things that accord with our arguments and analysis. We make no claim, of course, that our writings in February and March directly or indirectly influenced any justice in any way. Perhaps many of our ideas were generally in the air prior to oral argument. Perhaps we've been channeling the justices, not vice versa. Many other explanations are also imaginable. What follows are some of the overlaps between our pre-argument writing and the justices' utterance from the bench. As recorded in pages 30, 33, and 34 of the oral argument transcript, Chief Justice John Roberts asked Solicitor General John Sauer a two-part question about birth tourism. First, do you have any information about how common that is or how significant of a problem it is? When Sauer responded with a whopping estimate of how common it is, the Chief Justice moved in for the kill. Having said all that, do you agree that that has no impact on the legal analysis before us? When Sauer tried to push back, reminding the chiefs that they were in a new world now, the chief administered the coup de grace. Well, it's a new world, but it's the same Constitution. Let's see. Pages 5, 6 of the transcript record Justice Thomas inviting General Sauer to start with Dred Scott and its relationship to the Citizenship Clause, and also invited Sauer to explain the relationship between state and national citizenship and the 14th Amendment. So that was Thomas. On pages 12 to 15, Explain how the Lincoln administration responded directly to Dred Scott with important pronouncements and policies in 1862 to 1865 that formed the backdrop of the 14th Amendment drafted and ratified by Lincoln's allies. In response to Thomas, Sauer said nothing about the Lincoln administration. Sauer also reiterated his claim, which featured prominently in his mid-March reply brief, that because the 14th Amendment uses the word reside in connection with state citizenship, therefore national citizenship likely turns on residence/domicile. As we have explained in prior posts, he says that this is their opinion. It's gobbledygook. A hypothetical child born in the White House who lives his entire life in D.C. is surely a birthright citizen of the state, even if she never resides in or becomes a citizen of any other state, because D.C. is not a state. We listened to oral arguments in class, and they did bring up domicile quite a bit in the part that we got to listen to. Let's see. Justice Amy Coney Barrett on page 66 of the transcript raised several questions about American-born foundlings of unknown parentage, babies who might well be born and live their entire life separate from the domicile of their biological parents, as might occur in an orphan situation. As we just, let's see, I'm trying to skip their opinions. Just page 105 and 106 of the transcript, Justice Samuel Alito asked ACLU attorney Cecilia Wang a clever technical question that led her into a trap. Would you agree that the citizenship test in the 14th Amendment is the same test as in the 1866 Civil Rights Act? Ah, interesting. On page 40, Justice Sonia Sotomayor invoked the 57 Hintalopoulos case by name, just so you hope at least one judge would. Hintalopoulos court expressly asserted, rather than merely assumed, that a child of illegal aliens at the center of the case was, of course, an American citizen by birth. In her Hintalopoulos exchange with Sauer, Justice Sotomayor went easier on him, but she scored big when she said, "You ask us to concentrate on the prospective nature of the citizen's order. The logic of your position, if accepted, is that the next president or someone else could decide that it's different. Is Trump free tomorrow to make his order retroactive?" And this is the last one we'll look at. Justice Elena Kagan asks Sauer some excellent questions, though she does not always play the textualist in constitutional cases, as distinct from statutory disputes on page 17 and 18 of the transcript. So, okay, so they have not decided. That case is still pending. If we go backwards here and we look at the cases that are still pending, it is still pending. And so that's going to be an interesting case. So that was SCOTUS blog for today. We looked at ex parte and all the ex partes. I don't think you need to see the weather report. Okay, so this is what we read from today. 50 core American documents put out by the Ashbrook Press, which is actually Ashland University, where I got my master's in American history and government. And we drank some, what's it called? Nanjing Black Beer by Master Gao. It's a product of China. It was a gift from somebody from World Market, I'm guessing. It's pretty good. Again, we did the ex parte Milligan, ex parte Crow Dog, and ex parte McCardle. And then we looked specifically at the Trump v. Barbara birthright citizenship case. So I hope you enjoyed Documents and Drafts today. I had a lot of fun. I always have a lot of fun doing this. I hope you enjoy listening to it. And some thank yous. Got to get some thank yous. Get put the share screen back up here real quick. Some thank yous and some the podcast is available, Spreaker.com, iHeart, Spotify, Podcast Addict. It's actually on YouTube and other platforms. If you want the link to YouTube for this episode, you need to go to my Facebook page, Documents and Drafts, or my Twitter page, Docs and Drafts, and find it there. Book we use, of course, we already talked about that. Images are from Google. The SCOTUS information, oea.org and scotusblog.com. The cover art was done by a former student of mine, Emma Williams, and any kind of YouTube assistance and creative help is from also a former student, Olivia Baldwin. All right, so that's enough of that. Let's end the day. Thanks for hanging out with me, and we'll talk to you soon.